followed Allison, and then, just sort of stumbled upon him.
Yeah.
And so I went over to Luke's place because he said, hey, I'm going through some things and I have something for you. And he had packaged up a whole bunch of sports trading cards of my favorite teams and thought, maybe like your son might like these. I know you have a young boy. And so I took them, and Luke probably doesn't know this because I haven't told him, but every once in a while I just take a bunch of those and give them to my son. And it's like Christmas every time it happens. He thinks it's the greatest thing that's ever happened. But when I went over to pick them up, Luke was watching wrestling, and I was like, are you watching? It was like 3:00 in the afternoon. He had just, I think, gotten the network. I think it was right around the time that the network launched their online subscription options.
Yeah, because that's when we started really, like, we always kind of got together for the pay-per-views, and like, everybody chips in $5 or whatever. But like,
right.
once it was on the network, that's when they really started to become events. Like,
right, and that was my first ever one. I came over to, I think anyways, he was just sitting there watching wrestling, and I was like, it's 3:00 on a Tuesday. Are you watching wrestling? And so he was like, yeah, do you watch? And I was like, well, I haven't in a long time, but I'd like to. And so I got invited to an event, and the first one was actually on pay-per-view, I think, because I remember this because he was like, everyone kind of chips in $5, but we need toilet paper. So if you could pick up toilet paper on the way, we'll count that as your admission. So I just showed up for the first time ever, and I was like, hey, man, it's nice to meet all you guys. I brought toilet paper, and we're good to go.
I forgot about that, but I completely remember now. Like, that's hilarious.
And so that's how I sort of got into it. So I haven't watched it in a while. I would like to start doing it again, but the schedule has just been this is the thing where you sort of have to pick and choose what you do. My kids have a tendency to get up a lot during the night, so I'm often I'm not able to sort of regularly leave in the evenings because my son has a tendency to get up for ridiculous reasons and do that stuff. So I haven't had a chance to watch as much, but I'm always interested I'm actually always really interested. Like, one of the things I loved about listening to, because I listened to your episode with Luke, was listening, and I've listened to, all the episodes, but was listening to you talk about wrestling. It's really interesting to listen to real wrestling fans talk about wrestling, because I think that there's this really good balance of like understanding almost the game mechanics of the whole thing, while being a fan, like while being over the topics, just plain excited when certain people step into the ring. I watched WrestleMania. You'll know which one it is, but when Sting had his like sort of big finale.
Right.
And so I went over to Damien's house. I think Damien Daniels.
Yeah.
And so I went over to Damien's house and watched that, and The Rock shows up, and for me, he's the guy. Like, he is the guy that I just get over the moon excited about. Every time he's on anything, I watch his Instagram stories, I watch him on Ballers, I watch everything he does. I'm going to go see Jumanji. I don't care that it's going to be terrible. I just want to watch The Rock on screen at all times. And so for me, it's always been about the larger than life characters. And those have always been the guys I've really rooted for and connected with, have been like Hogan, The Rock, Warrior, those kind of much, much larger than life characters. And so, so here's what I'll ask you, which is to bring it all back. Who should I be rooting for at Rumble if I watch Rumble? Who is the guy that knowing me and knowing what I root for, who is the guy that I would want to see do it at Rumble?
Okay, interesting question. I'll sort of answer it and then sort of answer who I think, what I think would be a better story as well, I guess. Like,
sure.
So right now, I think probably the closest to that guy that you have would probably be Braun Strowman, which I don't know if you would have ever seen Braun Strowman, but he was... Yep. Yeah, so he was in like the Wyatt family, which like for the non-wrestling fans who are out there, who are the majority of my audience, the Wyatt family was this sort of like Bayou cult.
So creepy, but like a really like the storytelling was just, it was incredible. Like
really
that to me is like the peak of like production value and storytelling is like that's what the WWE should be doing, honestly.
Yeah. So like Braun Strowman's this like, I guess he's like probably like 6'7" and like, 270 pounds.
Big dude.
Big man. He like the guy is actually hilarious. Like I follow him on this Instagram, and he's just like this like big hillbilly nerd. Like he's just like hilarious. But like so he plays this character who's like he broke away from the Wyatt family, from like the cult, and was sort of like on his own, and just sort of like started destroying like local talent, like jobbers, like guys that they bring in to make their talent look really good. And just sort of like gradually over time, he's just like this over the top like giant, like in the way that Vince McMahon likes to create over the top giants. Like he's like, what's a good way to describe him? He's like if you combined like the Ultimate Warrior with like Mark Henry or something along those lines, where he's like flipping cars and stuff. It's
right.
like it's that kind of level. Like he in one match recently, like fairly recently, he got put into a garbage truck, and then was carted out, and then like a couple of weeks later emerged from the garbage truck to scare the pants off of like the Miz. The Miz is another guy that I think that if he were to win the Rumble, I think he'd be really happy, because I think he's like got that character sort of driven. Like he's The Rock when he was a bad guy in like '98. Like he's got that sort of.
The thing about the Miz that I've always found is like they just seem to really paint him as like such a wiener. Like they I find they don't give him enough like street cred with the other wrestlers. Like he always has this sort of like chip in his shoulder, like little brother sort of style that I could never like, I was always hoping, because I think he has a lot of charisma.
Yeah.
Like he obviously has a lot of charisma, but I feel like they always had him like sort of crying and running away sort of in a certain way. And I always felt that was kind of a mistake in sort of what they had from a talent standpoint from him.
Yeah. The other guy that I would say like that I would be really interested personally is if Shinsuke Nakamura were to win the Rumble, and then go on to face AJ Styles at WrestleMania, which is just sort of a dream match in a lot of ways, just between two really, really good workers. So that's that's my like wrestling nerd. I want to see a good match, but like Braun Strowman is just a lot of fun. Like he's like he's not the great, but like me that like I was the biggest Ryback fan in the world.
Right.
Like I was so pumped for Ryback, because here's this guy who's just like this muscle-bound meathead who just like comes in, destroys, asks to be fed more, opponents, and then like that's it. Like so, like I'm coming from it.
That
like
was
I'm
one
not...
of the things. Like I really like. I loved, in the heyday of WCW, or sort of I guess in their peak, when Goldberg was just running through everything. I don't think that Goldberg was a very good wrestler. I didn't, there wasn't a whole lot of stuff that he did that I found that interesting, but I loved watching him just literally run over people.
Yeah.
And I've always liked that sort of like juggernaut style. Like I'm literally unstoppable. It's just fun to watch. Like it's, when you look at like matches between like say Taker and someone who's a lot smaller, when he just manhandles someone, I've always found those matches to be really, really, really entertaining.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny because I was listening to I'm just getting out of the car here because I'm just at the rink. So I was listening to you and I messaged you about you and Luke talking about like all-time favorite tag team people. And one of my favorites was, and they were one of the ones that you talked about too, was the Road Warriors. Because they had that same style of just like, we're literally just going to run through people. And I've always found that to be interesting. I've always liked, the high flyers and that kind of stuff as well, and guys who can really carry a show. But for me, it's always been about just those tank people who
Yeah, there's something
who just are unstoppable.
There's something really awesome about that visceral sort of just a big meaty dude's going to beat you up type of thing. Anyhow,
I've never bored of watching Goldberg spear someone.
Exactly.
Like I've never not, like, in every time you're like, I know exactly what's going to happen. But I just don't care. It just still looks so good every single time.
Awesome. Well, you're at the rink, so we're gonna wrap things up here. Why don't you tell people your social media and about the podcast really quickly?
Sure. So the main way you can find me on social is at One Red Cat Media. I'm most active on Twitter and Instagram. I also, if you want sort of the less professional stuff, if you look at One Red Mike on Instagram, you get to see me doing yoga and building Lego and all that kind of stuff. Lately, I've been doing a thing where I've been reading a story at night through an Instagram stories and sort of reading kids' books to people, which has actually been really fun. And yeah, I mean, you can follow me, oneredcat.com, all spelled out, is sort of the business side of things. And, I guess the one thing I'll kind of, plug would be the podcast. So it's, Riding in Cars with Cats. And I basically have a weekly episode, really raw and, a lot of really just trying to give people information they can use, whether they're an employee or a founder or an entrepreneur or going to school or whatever the case may be. Just giving people some actionable stuff they can use. And, yeah, so listen to my podcast and listen to your podcast. And, other than that, we're good.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much. This has been a real treat. I'm really looking forward to, hopefully having you on again. I'm of course going to look to have you as a repeat guest. Maybe what we'll do is, I'll have you over, we'll watch some wrestling and we'll do a post show.
That sounds fantastic.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mike. Enjoy your hockey game. Hope you do well.
Thanks a lot, John. Take care.
Talk to you later. And that's bringing us to the end of another episode of the John DuLong Show. Thank you so much for joining me. Just to reiterate some of Mike's stuff here, at One Red Cat Media, at One Red Cat Mike on Instagram, oneredcat.com, Riding in Cars with Cats. And he actually has a new podcast over at soundcloud.com/mostly spoilers, which is a good bit of fun that he has with Laird Smith. And the show's called Mostly Spoilers, so if you end up listening to it and you get spoiled about something, well, you kind of got warned. Of course, also really, really little wins, as I said at the top of the show, gumroad.com/L/really little wins. All these links are going to be in the show notes. Don't you worry. I got you. It's going to be all right. We're going to get there. This show is produced by me with music from Mon Plaisir. You can check them out at loyaltyfreakmusic.com. You can follow the show on facebook.com/The John DuLong Show. Email into the show at johndulongShow@gmail.com. And you can follow me on social media at Jibberdy, JIBERDY. Make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes or Google Play. If you could, rate and review, as it helps get some more folks listening. Another great way is to tell a friend about the show, get the word out, and of course, make sure you tune in every single Monday for your weekly dose of Monday morning nonsense. So for John DuLong, I'm John DuLong, and remember, if you happen to lose your job as a stage designer, try and make sure you leave without making a scene. Thanks. One of the things that I may be stressed out about at this show about the most is that little tag at the end. Like, I'm worried that I'm going to accidentally use the same one twice. So I keep on, getting a huge list of them and then forgetting which ones I've ended up using and then deleting that whole list and going and finding a huge new list more. By contrast, this little rambly bit, this little bonus content that you get at the end of the show, it's kind of my favorite part. It's kind of the least stressful part. It's kind of the part that I just literally have no plans for ever. And I just sort of say whatever's at the top of my mind while I'm recording the outro. I really hope that weather doesn't suck tomorrow. Ugh. I hate winter driving so much. people get really excited about winter and like, yeah, that's fine. It's great. You enjoy the snow. It's pretty and whatever. It's nice for Christmas and la 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 la. But then